Welcome back, everyone, to this Week 14 edition of Bruce Monnin's Computer Points Podcast. I'm Bruce Monnin, your host, recording once again from our studios in Minster, Ohio, checking in from the greater Cincinnati area, home of the mediocre and slowly dropping 5-6 Cincinnati Bearcats, who need a home nip-at-night victory over TCU this week to become bowl eligible.
Oh
Our
boy.
our first night game at UC this year with the new television contract. 6 o'clock isn't the latest at night, but it's good enough to be dark and to give the students plenty of time to lubricate before the game. We have our co-host, executive producer, chief researcher, and occasional alumni Bearcat band member, Rebekah Monnin.
I always love your word choices there, Dad. Lubricating the student section is a particularly fun one.
Not always a good thing if your team is mediocre and dropping, however.
No, they're probably going to bail at halftime, but it'll be an exciting first half.
Hey, at least for us, our Bearcat basketball team had 2 road victories, crushed both teams, Northern Kentucky and Georgia Tech, to go 5-0, remain ranked. Could be good things coming on the basketball front, Rebekah.
Could be. They looked pretty good when I saw them, but again, they were playing a smaller team and blew them out of the water, so they weren't pulling out their best moves, probably. I don't know, maybe they were. They looked pretty good then.
I believe you saw them beat Nicholls State, who I noticed
Yeah.
just yesterday defeated very handily 0-3 Mississippi College, I believe.
And they had just beat Northern Kentucky the day before they played us. So maybe it was an impressive showing. All I know is that our guys were attempting a hell of a lot of three-pointers and making enough. They could have made more with all the attempts they made.
As of a few days ago, one of the UC players was the top 3-point shooter in the country at this point.
What is
So
it? Lucas
Lucocious.
Lukosius. Yeah. He was
His,
the
his,
one trying them all.
yes, his real
And I
name
think
is,
they made like 12 threes in the game, and they missed a heck of a lot more than that.
that's okay. You can miss more than you make as long as it's not too bad. If you just make
Yeah.
30 some
Oh, yeah.
percent, you're looking pretty good.
Maybe I'm just not a basketball stats person if 30 some percent is good.
Well, think of 3-point shots. If you make 1/3 of your 3-point shots, that's as good as making half of your 2-point shots on a straight point basis.
Right.
We get a little stats into our college basketball here. But back to the purpose of this podcast, we will be looking at the 14 state semifinal playoff matchups. We will give an overview, and of course, we'll mention what Drew Pasteur's fantastic 50 computers says about those outcomes. We are also going to throw out some of our own thoughts and our own predictions. By the way, last week, Rebekah, we received a note on X from longtime listener for
Oh,
years, he says, from the
wow.
West Virginia Pennsylvania border. So we shall see how Aaron West did with his picks for this week's games.
That's exciting.
Yes.
Got a years-long listenership.
Also, as I was cruising through yappy.net, there was a private note from a Cincinnati LaSalle fan called LS92 who also submitted his picks for the week. So we will see how he did. He also said he greatly enjoyed our interview with former MAC Commissioner Don Kemper.
Oh, good. I'm glad. He was fun to talk to.
So, first, we shall see how last week's predictions went. Who gets that Christmas ale from Bud's Pizza?
I have a feeling it's not me.
Well, I'm going to start at the top. The winner this week was the Harbin Computer Points and the Fantastic 50, who both went 5-1. So, guess what?
I should really know better. But where's the fun in that?
Well, the good news is I don't have to pay a beer to a computer.
Oh, is that how we're doing it? Only if we beat the computer.
Now, if Joe Idle happens to show up, or Mr. Harbin, who I think is no longer with us, or Drew Pasteur, if they
Yeah?
happen to show up in Minster, we'll pay off.
Okay.
Now, they both went 5-1 last week. I am giving the victory to the Harbin points because using the point system I came up with, that got 175 points, where the Fantastic 50 computer only received 164. So I am going to use that point system as a
Oh,
tiebreaker
so
in the
Harbin
future.
and Fantastic 50 picked two different uh
Yes, they did.
games incorrectly.
Correct.
Or yeah, okay. Interesting.
Our two
Wow.
fans here, Mr. Aaron West and LS92, both went 4-2 last week.
Oh, okay. Congrats to them.
Our guest on the podcast, Don Kemper, also went 4-2.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Myself, since I wimped out on one game, I went 3-2. And Rebekah, since she went with her heart on that Minster game, she went 3-3.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm not the sports expert here. I'm the color commentary.
So apparently that was all the prize was last week, was not real significant. So our finance people here at the podcast have decided that we are not running enough debt, not in the red near enough. So for this week, the winner gets a bigger prize shipped to their home
Shipped to their home.
if they care to give us their address, that is.
Dang.
This week's prize is a variety pack of 18 full-size candy bars, including
Wow.
6 Snickers, 5 Twix, 4 Three Musketeers, and 3 Milky Ways.
Now, do you have this variety pack in hand already?
Actually, at the moment, it is in my shopping cart on Amazon.com, which
Oh, and
makes
you're
it much
gonna put
easier
in
to
the
ship.
winner's address. Okay. All right, cool.
So, once again, everyone, if you want to pick these 14 games, and you can find out real easily what the 14 state semifinals are, even if you don't listen to the rest of this podcast, just send in your choices and we'll put you in the contest. Rebekah, where would they send those choices to?
You can send those choices to us by emailing bdmonnin@nktelco.net, or you can direct message them or tweet them to Dad on Twitter at Bruce Monnin, or apparently prowl the Yappy page. We have is that like a forum site? Do they open up a new forum for a podcast? Oh, you said private message. Private message Dad there, probably under
Correct.
Bruce Monnin, or drop it in our YouTube channel. Just search for Bruce Monnin's Computer Points.
One message on the YouTube channel this week. Someone just wanted to know if we did that live. I didn't know what the exact answer was. We
Like
record
live
live.
stream?
We
No,
record live, but we don't live stream.
I think that's the question. Yeah. These
And that
are
was
edited slightly before being put up.
and that was from a different person than the other two. This was from a listener in Columbus, Ohio.
Ooh, thank you for asking.
Yes.
I think
No picks were submitted
that's
on the
okay.
YouTube though. So
We appreciate any and all engagement. But yes, these are edited and then uploaded, even if they're not edited as much as I or my mother would appreciate sometimes.
I get a little lazy on the editing on occasion.
I can't complain too much. He does all the editing, so I can go do other things.
But we're going to start here, as is our usual, not always, but usual thing. We will start with Division One,
Ooh,
work our way down. Each division, of course, has 2 semifinal games, and some of these teams are fairly unknown to Rebekah and I, so
absolutely.
you all have the advantage on us. So we shall start with 9-5 Lakewood St. Edward playing 12-2 Powell Olentangy Liberty. Olentangy Liberty had 73% more Harbin computer points in the regular season, probably because Lakewood St. Edward went 5-5 in the regular season. St. Edward, however, was a 3-point favorite last week against Mentor, and they won 13-7. Olentangy Liberty was a 9-point favorite against Pickerington North, and they won 21-9. So both teams did slightly better than expected, but not much. The computer likes St. Edward as a 6-point favorite over Olentangy Liberty.
Interesting.
So I did a little research here. Two common opponents. St. Edward beat Pickerington North 28 to nothing in week one, while Olentangy Liberty won 21 to 9 last week. Not quite as large a margin there. Olentangy Liberty beat Cleveland Glenville 24-13 in week two, while St. Edward lost 28 to 27 to Glenville in week six. And we'll be talking about Cleveland Glenville later as they are alive in Division 4 yet.
Huh. I hmm.
Now,
Those must have
St.
been
Ed,
some hefty losses for a 9-5 team to have gotten to the semifinals. Must have been good teams.
well, how about that? Rebekah has not read ahead, but that is the next note on our script here. St. Edward's five losses were to 12-1 Boyle County from Kentucky,
Okay.
10-3 Massillon, 11-3 Glenville, 13-1 Moeller, and 12-2 Hoban. So yeah,
Ah,
they were some massive losses.
okay.
We will be mentioning many of those teams later in the podcast.
Absolutely.
Olentangy Liberty stayed closer to home to the Columbus area. They lost to 10-3 Upper Arlington, but then revenged that loss in the playoffs. Is revenged a verb?
Avenged, maybe.
Avenged. There we go. They avenged the loss in the playoffs.
Revenge really hits wrong in my grammar brain.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right, does it?
Mm-mm.
They also lost to 10-3 Olentangy Berlin. Sounds like a big rivalry going on there in the Olentangy area. By the way, these two teams played twice before in the playoffs. St. Edward won handily in 2014 and in 2018, but those were many years ago. I have all my picks already written down this time, Rebekah.
Put
So
me down
once
for
you give
St. Ed.
yours,
I'm not
oh,
gonna go against all of the computers when I know very little about the teams,
I
especially
also have
since I went against them when I know the teams and I was wrong.
I also have chosen St. Ed. My note here is I think it'll be close, however.
Hmm, I could see that.
The other Division One game, 13-1 Archbishop Moeller from Cincinnati
Hmm.
up against 11-3 Centerville. Moeller had 41% more Harbin computer points in the regular season. Last week, Moeller was a 15-point favorite against St. Xavier, and they won by just 5, 28-23. Bet you there was a few fans at that game. Last week, Centerville was a 10-point favorite against Huber Heights Wayne, and they won 23-14. So they won by 9, about the same. Both games were that I just mentioned there were regular season rematches, and they were both tighter than the first game during the regular season. Not real surprising, I guess, there. Second time can be tougher. Computer says Moeller is a 24-point favorite in this game.
That does not surprise me.
There are two common opponents here. Moeller beat St. Xavier 45-37 in week 5 and 28-23 last week. Centerville lost by 24 points, 34-10 in week 2.
Ew.
Both teams beat Lakota East. Moeller won 55-28 in week 12. Centerville won 31-21 in week 1. So the common opponents lean towards Moeller. I also note Centerville had something of an ugly week 5 loss to 6-5 Springfield, where they lost 17-3. There's my notes. What does that tell you, Rebekah?
I'm nothing if not loyal to my local team, so I'm gonna go with Moeller. There's a reason there's a culture of naming your high school when you introduce yourself to people in Cincinnati, and Moeller's a big part of it.
That's for sure. I also chose Moeller. My note for this one says not close. So I
Oh
have faith
no.
in Moeller.
That and we've got to keep our Bud's Pizza owners happy.
Oh, yes. Some Moeller grads there and proud of it.
Mm-hmm.
Moving to Division 2 already. Our two semifinals. The first one, 12-2 Akron Archbishop Hoban against undefeated 14-0 Avon. Avon had 22% more Harbin points in the regular season. Last week, Hoban was a 4-point favorite against Cuyahoga Falls Walsh Jesuit, and they won 21-7. Avon was a 3-point favorite against Medina Highland, and they won 28-20. The computer says this is a 2-point game and it favors Hoban. We have one common opponent here, Cleveland St. Ignatius. If you recognize the name, they are known for being a powerhouse for many, many years. This year they went 0-10 somehow. I don't know what happened at Cleveland
Hmm,
St. Ignatius.
interesting.
Hoban beat Ignatius 45-14 in week 5. Avon won 42-21 in week 1. Let's see. We mentioned Avon did not lose. Hoban's only Ohio loss was 19-14 to Walsh Jesuit in week 7. And they avenged that 21-7 last week. Hey, I got it right this time in the script. How about
There you go.
that? By the way, Hoban has won all 5 previous playoff matchups between these teams in 2017, 2018, 2020, 2021, and 2023. Although that last one last year was only by a score of 17-14. And I will mention Avon does have 15 starters back from last year's game.
Oof. Well, legacy and reputation says Hoban. But boy, an underdog story is fun, and the computers say Avon. No, they say Hoban. Wait, which one is it?
The computer says Hoban by 2 points.
Well, I feel like the vibes are going for Avon. I don't know if that's enough to pick off of. But hey, I'm the color person. Give me Avon. I think this is their year they take it back. They break the streak.
And you know what? I had the exact same thought. I think those returning players are going to get the win this time. So I also picked Avon. You'll notice my notes here are very brief. My note for this one also says close.
Hey, that's all you need sometimes.
Well, there's really just a small spot on the paper where I'm writing this stuff down is the reason.
You're running out of space. It's not like there's a whole cabinet full of paper right next to you.
Our other Division II game, undefeated 14-0 Cincinnati Anderson up against 13-1 Sunbury Big Walnut. I am not familiar with Cincinnati Anderson, where that is at in town.
See, I went off on the big walnut. Let me check a peek.
Well, we'll get back to that in
Anderson
a little
High
bit.
School is it's near Seven Hills. Way on the east side.
That fell
Uh, s-
east. Yeah.
Still within the 275 loop, but just barely. Close to the river.
Okay. Oh, I didn't think it'd be close to the river. Okay.
Past Lunkin, south of Eastgate Mall.
Hmm. I
Really in
used
the
to love
bottom corner.
I used to love playing golf out at the golf course at Lunkin Airport. It always seemed like if you hit one really high, you might hit the bottom of one of those planes coming in. Never did though.
Probably could have.
But back to our game, Anderson had 17% more Harbin computer points in the regular season. Anderson was an 11-point favorite against Cincinnati LaSalle last week and won 28-21. Big Walnut was a 29-point underdog against Massillon last week, and they won
Ooh.
14-7.
Oh, they beat Massillon.
And yet the computer is not impressed. The computer likes Anderson by 26 points. There are no common opponents here. Big Walnut's one loss was 20-0 to Bishop Watterson in week 1. They are still alive somewhere. I forget what division. We'll come across them shortly. And my only note on Anderson is that their mascot is the Raptors.
Ooh. Big Walnut is named for the creek that runs through the town,
Oh, good to know.
and it's on the north side of Columbus.
So who you feeling for the win there, Rebekah?
Oh, I think Anderson, but that Massillon win is impressive. But I think the statistics are going to win out here.
Well, look at that. I also picked Anderson. We're just going together here this week. My note says Big Walnut may come down a little from last week's high of that upset of Massillon.
It's a lot of words for your tiny space on your paper.
Yeah, it was tough there, but I got it in. Now, not to dismiss that achievement by Big Walnut, we have named Big Walnut this episode's
Team of the Week. Ba, ba, ba. Our team never seems so good. So good, so good, so good.
Oh boy. Congrats to Big Walnut.
Congrats to the Golden Eagles. By the way,
Excellent name.
I think they missed the boat on that mascot name myself.
You
I
think
heard
it should have
Big
been walnut based?
Yes, I came up with either the squirrels or the brownies.
The squirrels or the brownies. Okay. Sure. That would have been entertaining for sure.
I don't think the black stain on the driveway worked real well. So.
Or the nice wooden cabinets.
Yes, those are nice.
No, I think Golden Eagle's a pretty good name, Dad.
Okay. Anyway, they entered their regional championship game against Massillon, as we said, as a 29-point underdog, emerged victorious 14-7. Big Walnut overcame being outgained 378 yards to 170. Game was tied 7-7.5. Big Walnut scored in the third quarter, then held on for the victory. I have not been able to get the exact amount, but I do know that Massillon had over 200 yards in penalties.
Ooh,
At
that
one
won't
point,
help.
I believe it was over 10 of those little 5-yard false starts on the offense, including I was watching a play-by-play at one time. Massillon's offense jumped 4 consecutive plays. So 4 straight
Oh,
plays, they went backwards 5 yards.
oh boy.
I'm told that was a problem for Massillon all year, but maybe not to that extent.
They were really amped up on the playoffs energy.
Well, maybe they were just frustrated because they were being upset by Big Walnut, right? So
Maybe.
give the congrats to the Golden Eagles.
Absolutely.
Okay, moving to Division 3. A few familiar teams here. First, we'll have 13-1 Youngstown Ursuline up against 13-1 Toledo Central Catholic. Toledo Central Catholic had 11% more Harbin computer points in the regular season. Ursuline was actually a 27-point favorite last week against Gates Mill Gilmore, and they won 54-0. Dominating performance. Not to be outdone, Toledo Central Catholic was a 28-point favorite against Parma Heights Franciscan, and they won 45-7. Most people I've heard talking about this think this is a tight game. The computer actually says Ursuline is the 11-point favorite. Let's see, there were no common opponents, but it is worth noting both teams are the Fighting Irish, so expect a victory from the Fighting Irish in this one.
That one's easy to predict, yeah.
Ursuline's one loss was a 37-35 game that they lost to 13-1 Walsh Jesuit in week 1. So one of those week 1 games. Toledo Central Catholic's one loss was 21-7 to 12-1 Detroit Catholic Central in week 3. And I have heard reports that this may be one of the best Detroit Catholic Central teams in a long time, if that means anything to you. Not a lot to me, actually, but
No, but I'm glad their loss was to a good team.
Ursuline was familiar to me. I looked them up. They defeated Coldwater in 3 championship games in 2000, 2009, and 2010. But they lost to Marion Local in the 2007 D5 title game. Must have gained a few students there at Ursuline. They're up to D3 now, or else it's that competitive balance number brings them up.
That might be it, yeah.
What's your thoughts on this one, Rebekah?
I really don't have a strong impression either way. So I'm going to lean on the computer and pick Ursuline.
I also picked Ursuline. My note says, not sure why.
Oh, good. A
It
gut
just
feeling.
it just feels like it, yes. The other game in Division 3 features 14-0 Columbus Bishop Watterson against 14-0 London. Watterson had 56 more Harbin computer points in the regular season. Considering they had the same record, that tells you a little strength of schedule action going on there.
56 entire points?
56% more.
Ah. It's like I thought we were running on the basis of like 50 total points. Cool.
Let's see. Last week, Watterson was a 17-point favorite against Steubenville, and they defeated the Big Red 37-7. London was a 14-point favorite against Bellbrook, and they won 13-0. The computer likes the Catholic school, says Watterson is a 20-point favorite over London. We have no common opponents here. Watterson has won their 4 playoff games by an average of 34 points, all of which had a running clock. London won by an average of 18 points. No running clocks there, so they're more used to closer games. Watterson's been a little more dominant.
Okie dokie. I gotta go Watterson. They've been outperforming at least last week's estimation, and London underperformed, so but barely. I'll trust that 20-point favorite to Watterson.
I went the same way, mostly because of the 20-point favorite on the computer. But yeah, Watterson has seemed more dominant the last few weeks than London has. So that also factors in a little bit. Oh, and it's time for our 2 scores of the week, Rebekah.
Scores of the week.
We're keeping it in. We're doing our best.
Little different one here this week, Rebekah. I went all the way to the state of Texas for the first one.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's got to be real fun then.
We had Frisco Reedy 49, Georgetown 45.
Okay.
Frisco Reedy was trailing 45-7 with 2 minutes remaining in the first half.
Wow.
Frisco Reedy then scored 42 unanswered points for the victory. Now, this had to be a little deja vu for Georgetown. The week before, Georgetown had been up 28-0 at the half and then had to hold on to win in overtime. So they were outscored by 28 points in the second half. So they recovered from losing their lead last week. This week, they lost an even bigger lead. Our other score of the week, Cleveland Glenville 12, Perry 6 in overtime. Do you remember we had the Perry coach on after his team won state last year?
Yes. Yes, I do. I'm sorry. I have a terrible memory. You could tell me any coach and I would nod.
He's the one that didn't know what a combine was in the field. He called it the corn mower.
Oh yeah. That was fun.
So
City
back to this
boy.
game. By the way, Glenville scored a first quarter touchdown to lead 6-0. Missed the extra point. Perry was stopped inside the Glenville 20 before half, so it remained 6-0. Perry tied the game up early in the third quarter, also missed the extra point. Glenville, later in the game, drove to the Perry 6, where they were sacked and had a penalty, which forced them to try a 39-yard field goal, which they missed. Glenville later missed a 30-yard field goal, so the game went to overtime. In overtime, Perry started at the Glenville 20, and by the time they were done, they went backwards 35 yards on penalties and sacks.
Oh no.
A little too far to even try the field goal from there.
Yeah.
On Glenville's turn, they handed the ball off. One play, the guy ran 20 yards for the touchdown to win the game. And because of that, we'll be talking about Cleveland Glenville here in our next game in Division 4. They are still alive. 11-3 Cleveland Glenville will be playing 13-1 Sandusky Perkins. Perkins had 32% more Arbin computer points in the regular season. They also had 2 more wins in the regular season. Last week, Glenville was a 1-point favorite against Perry, and they won that game in overtime, 12-6. So you could say that game came out dead even, huh? In
You
regulation.
could. You sure could.
Peter was awfully close there. Perkins was a 16-point favorite against Ontario, and they won 28-21. The computer thinks this will be a tight game. It says Glenville is a 3-point favorite over Perkins. We have no common opponents here. However, Glenville did beat Perkins 36-26 in the regional finals last year. And that was the toughest game that Glenville faced in the postseason last year. Let's see. Glenville's 3 losses are the teams who are all in the D1 or D2 semifinals. So they had a schedule. I believe their conference schedule was a bunch of teams in the Cleveland City League who were not very good. So it was a good thing they scheduled tough out-of-conference games. Glenville, currently 4-1 against the spread in the playoffs. Perkins 1-3 against the spread. Where does that take you, Rebekah?
Seems like a close one. Something about just the sheer number of points both teams have been able to put up in the last couple games makes me lean towards Perkins. I like a high-scoring team over a low one. And the fact that Glenville only had 6 in standard time doesn't excite me. So I'm going to pick Perkins.
Well, I'm sure this would be our first disagreement, but I also have Perkins, and my note says just for the heck of it.
Just for the heck of it.
Just a feeling.
Well, it's a good thing I didn't go off of only a feeling. It was slightly more than that. Just the tiniest bit.
Their Division 4 game, we have another Cincinnati squad, 12-2 Cincinnati Taft, up against 14-0 Ganada Hutton Indian Valley. Indian Valley had 54% more Harbin computer points in the regular season. Last week, Taft was a 1-point underdog against Archbishop Alter, but they won 26-7. Indian Valley was a 10-point favorite against St. Clairsville, and they won 48-7. The computer says another good game to attend. It favors Taft by 1 point. There are no common opponents. Taft's 2 losses are 20-16 to 10-3 Mount Healthy, and 19-14 to 5-6 Withrow. I will note that was in that week 6 when the hurricane went through. I don't remember how the weather was in Cincinnati at game time. I know it was ugly there about 3 hours before game time, that's for sure. By the way, Indian Valley has a much ballyhooed running back. And I looked it up.
Ballyhooed?
Ballyhooed is actually in the spell checker on the computer here. So
You know, it's on theme because Ballyhoo is a key lyric in the Wicked musical that just came out this week. It's one of those real but silly words that Wicked just loves to feed in next to their not real and silly words. Highly recommend everyone watch it. It's a fantastic movie.
is it? I just found out it's a 2-parter, and they never really mentioned that on the advertisements.
They did not. They sure did not, but I kind of had a suspicion because they showed zero plot from the second half of the play. So that makes sense.
I have seen the play down at Dayton, I'm sure.
Mhm.
Whether I see the movie or not, I don't get to many movies these days, but maybe someday.
Oh, that was actually a spoiler. Ballyhoo will be in the second movie, not the first movie.
Oh,
It's a post-intermission song.
so anyway, this much ballyhooed running back has over 2,500 yards so far on the season. Taft's strength is supposed to be their defense, so that could be an interesting point counterpoint type of thing there. Don't know if I gave you much to go on there, Rebekah, but
I got sucked into the history of Gnaden Hutton. Gnaden. It's an old settlement on the east side of the state, settled in 1772. It's Ohio's oldest existing settlement. It's got a population of like 1,200 people now.
if I remember right, that was first home of some Christianized Moravian Indians, some
Correct.
Delaware Indians who became Moravian. I don't know if they were some of the ones that got massacred or if they were just in the village next door to the ones that got massacred. But
This one, there was a Gnaden Hutton massacre of 1782. Not a good time, but there's still a memorial up there today.
there ought to be.
There ought to be.
Was a little tension between the Indians and the settlers at the time, and a group got together and someone they looked out somewhere and said, the Indians that are actually causing us trouble look like they might be pretty tough. But over here, there's some
Oh,
ones that don't have any guns or anything. They took up Christianity and they're just farmers. So let's go over there instead.
oh no.
It was not a good part of history. Later on, some other Indians got a hold of some of the commanders of that mission, and what happened to them was not pretty.
Generally not a good time for
No.
anyone in the area.
So does that
Okay.
history influence your pick?
Oh, that's what we're talking about. Nope. I gotta go Taft. Local friends.
And I also chose Taft because I'm picking defense over offense.
Maybe I should pick. Oh, I know it was 300 years ago, 250 years ago, but it seems like they need a win still. No, I'll stick to Taft.
Yeah, the Division 5, we're starting to get to some actual teams from West Central Ohio here, Rebecca.
Ooh, okay.
We'll start with 14-0 Liberty Center against 14-0 Canfield South Range. South Range, 22% more Harbin points in the regular season. Last week, Liberty Center was a 9-point favorite against Milan Edison, and they won 34-6.
Oh,
South Range was an 18-point favorite against Poland Seminary, and they won 17-16. Despite all that, the computer says Liberty Center only a 3-point favorite over South Range. They have no common opponents. Liberty Center is 3-1 against the computer spread. South Range 1-3 against the spread in the playoffs. Now, just 2 years ago, South Range beat Liberty Center 35-0 in the 2022 state semifinals. So, are we looking
interesting.
for history to repeat itself or vengeance to be Liberty Center's?
That's compelling. That's real compelling, but not enough to pick against Liberty Center. But boy, 35-0 just 2 years ago. Yikes.
Now, I didn't tell you this ahead of time. I did see some people from South Range claiming this year's team is not up to the 2022 standard.
Darn
Therefore,
shame.
I had picked Liberty Center myself. Now, their opponent in the state championship game will be either 13-1 Ironton or
Okay.
13-1 West Liberty Salem.
Oh, we could have a Battle of the Liberties playoff.
Yes, we could. We could have a Liberty Bowl and a state championship game. How
We could
about that?
have a Liberty Bowl.
I would say I'm glad to see West Liberty Salem in this game, and I am, except I actually picked them to lose to Indian Lake last week. My bad. Ironton, 54% more Harbin computer points in the regular season. Ironton was a 31-point favorite against Wheelersburg last week, and they won 55-0. West Liberty Salem was actually a 2-point underdog against Indian Lake, the first time Indian Lake had been favored throughout playoffs, and it cost them. West Liberty Salem won 21-14. The computer says Ironton is a 39-point favorite in this game.
Oh no. Oh no.
No common opponents, but both teams are the Tigers, so we will have the Tigers moving on. You know,
I'm gonna go
Liberty Center's the
Ironton.
Tigers too, aren't they?
We could have a Tiger, Tiger, Tiger.
Yeah, I wonder what South Range are.
Well,
I
you
hope they're
can't
not
just say
Tigers.
that. South Range football.
By the way, Ironton's only loss,
Raiders.
Raiders. Okay. Ironton's only loss was in week 6 against a Canadian traveling team called Football North from Mississauga. They,
Mississauga.
they seem to play a lot of Ohio teams, so I don't think they spent a lot of time in Canada. West Liberty Salem, their loss was 42-14 in week 3 to 12-1 Jamestown Greenview. By the way, just an interesting stat, Ironton has 22 interceptions this season, 7 of them pick sixes returned for touchdowns.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
I found that intriguing also.
Yeah, go off. Yeah, as much as I want a Liberty Bowl, and I really, really, really want a Liberty Bowl, 39-point favorite says a lot. So I'm going Ironton.
And Ironton, a very traditional state powerhouse football team. Lots of experience with the playoffs at Ironton. That's why I picked them myself.
Absolutely.
Moving to Division 6, we have 14-0 Kirtland. There's a shocker, huh?
Woo! Love to see
Up,
it.
yep, up against 14-0 Galleon Northmore. I just learned something about that. Oh,
And then forgot it.
some people say that the Northmore appears to be spelled wrong the way it just ends, M-O-R, but
Right.
it's named because it's in the north part of Morrow County, Morrow.
Okay.
Hence the name Northmore.
I can
Let's
accept
see. I
that.
believe I mentioned Kirtland, 40% more Harbin computer points in the regular season. Kirtland was a 21-point favorite against Dalton and won 41-6 last week. Northmore was a 13-point favorite against Grandview Heights, and they won 37-6. So no
Oof.
slouches over there at Northmore. Computer likes Kirtland by 19 points in this game. No common opponents here. Northmore has beaten the spread in 6 straight games, so they keep improving on what the computer thinks of them. So I'm thinking 19 points is a bit much, maybe, for the underdog-ishness.
Could be, could be.
They put a running clock in 3 playoff games. Kirtland's average playoff margin of victory is 46-4 with 4 running clocks. So things seem as normal in Kirtland.
I'm a Kirtland fan. I love seeing them. I'm gonna pick them again. Give them a shot
I,
at the MAC final for the state championship.
I also picked Kirtland, and my note says, ouch.
Ouch! Ouch! All right, all right.
Winner of that game will face either 13-1 Coldwater or 13-1 Bluffton, two of our West Central Ohio coverage teams. Coldwater had 33% more Harbin points in the regular season. Last week, Coldwater was a 16-point favorite against Anna. They won 45-21. They actually had the running clock going at one point, and then Anna came back and tightened the game up late.
Good for them.
Bluffton was a 1-point favorite against Patrick Henry. I believe we both went Patrick Henry, but Bluffton won 24-7. So Bluffton coming back from that Week 10 loss to Columbus Grove pretty strongly. Computer says Coldwater, a 2-touchdown, 14-point favorite. Once again, no common opponents. Coldwater's average score in their 6 non-MAC games is 47-7.
Yep.
Bluffton, 1-1 in the playoffs against MAC teams historically, beating Minster in 1991 and losing to Delphi St. John's in 2003. And I can still picture that Minster game in 91. Oh, Minster was ahead, driving for a touchdown to make it a 2-score game late in the fourth quarter, had a 4th-and-1. Thought, punt does nothing, field goal's iffy, we'll just go for it. Gave it to the running back, and he made it, but then he decided to stretch for a couple extra yards, got the ball punched out. Bluffton picked up the fumble and returned it all the way to like the 3-yard line. Did we have to hold him to a field goal? Maybe we held him to a field goal then to send it to overtime. But it turned out the game-saving tackle on that long run was by our quarterback, who broke his finger, but we didn't know that till after the game. He threw some ugly passes in overtime, and Bluffton won in overtime.
Well, it's been a long 30 years since then, so
It's
maybe
only
the
been
tides have
33 years.
changed.
It's not like I remember it or anything.
Not at all. Ooh, your memory for this is incredible.
I believe the quarterback's dad was the security guard that I would go by when I went into work on the weekends at Minster Machine. So,
Oh no. Oh, poor man.
by the way, here for a non-official stat. Why I looked it up on this one, I'm not sure. There is a poll posted on yappy.net for this game. 56 people picked Coldwater, 8 picked Bluffton. But there's also more
Yeah,
MAC fans than Northwest Conference fans on that site, so that may have played into it just a touch.
it usually does. But you can make it 57 for me. Going Coldwater.
And you
It's
can make
MAC
it
all the way.
58. Yeah, 58 with me, although Bluffton did make me pay last week.
Yeah,
I should be more respectful, but I'm taking Coldwater respectfully.
I don't know if it's a lack of respect or just a hell of
More
a lot of
respect the
data
other
for
way.
MAC teams. Yeah.
Okay, and that brings us to Division 7. And in what I predict will be the game to determine the state runner-up, we have 13-1 Jeromesville Hillsdale up against 12-2 Danville.
Oh,
Hillsdale, 8% more Harbin computer points in the regular season. Last week, Hillsdale was a 17-point favorite against Cuyahoga Heights, and they won strongly, 44-14. Danville was a 26-point favorite against Beaver Eastern and won 40-6. I have not heard good things about how Beaver Eastern looked in this game. That was a anyway. Not a lot of respect online for the region that Danville and Beaver Eastern came out of. The computer says this is a good one. Hillsdale, a 2-point favorite. They had one common opponent, and it was winless Loudonville. This may not tell us much, Rebecca.
Okay.
Hillsdale won 42-7 in week 3. Danville won 22-0 in week 6. Hurricane weather again.
Okay.
Both teams have put the running clock on all 4 of their playoff opponents, so no challenges for either team yet in the playoffs. This will be the first one, it looks like. Hillsdale's loss was in week 10, 45-21 to 10-2 Norwayne. Again, I always am a little iffy about week 10 losses for teams that are easily in the playoffs. Danville lost 12-8 to 11-1 Hopewell Loudon in week 3. So that's pretty good. They lost 41-6 to 14-0 Northmore in week 5. We said
That's
earlier we think Northmore's pretty good, but 41-6 is
pretty beefy.
pretty beefy, yes.
Oof. I was gonna say Danville because I think they have just based off of pure numbers, maybe slightly better defense. But boy, 41-6 says maybe not.
That was about 10 weeks ago.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with it. I'm gonna go Danville.
All right, so this will be the deciding matchup. I have Hillsdale. Although I say here, I believe Danville has more historical experience in the playoffs, and that quite often can be important.
Sure can.
But I have Hillsdale. And the winner of that game will face either 14-0 Marion Local or 14-0 Columbus Grove, two very strong teams. Marion Local, 1% more Harbin computer points in the regular season, so pretty much a tie there. Marion Local was a 26-point favorite against Minster last week. They won 21-7. Columbus Grove was a 34-point favorite against Delphi St. John's, and they won 14-0.
Oh, okay.
Computer says Marion Local is a 24-point favorite in this game, 2 less than it said they were a favorite last week. So Computer considers Columbus Grove a slightly tougher opponent than Minster. Delphi St. John's, the only common opponent. Marion Local beat them 71-0 in week 4. Columbus Grove won 14-0 last week. Delphi St. John's is a healthier team now than they were in week 4, but 71-0.
Still, Marion Local's crazy.
Marion Local has had a running clock in every one of their last 20 games except the 3 times they played Minster.
Yeah. Yeah.
That includes a Coldwater game or 2 in there.
Yeah. Boy, every time I want to see information that makes me pick against them, and every time there's not enough. So I'm going Marion Local. Give them another state title.
I also picked Marion Local, and my note says state champs. So
Yeah.
we think alike there. So we're through them, Rebecca. 14 games.
We did it.
That wraps up our preview of the state semifinals. Rebecca already told you where to send your comments, picks, etc.
Ooh. Oh. Oh, when you said pics, I thought you meant pictures, and I got excited and then confused, and then I realized. Oh, picks for who would win. I don't know what pictures you would send, except maybe from the games.
I
Those would
would
be
take
fun.
pictures. I'm not sure I want them, but that's depends on what they are.
Yeah.
So, hope you enjoyed this podcast. As always, if you did, be sure to subscribe. You know all the places.
Everywhere except Spotify.
Everywhere except Spotify. And again, there was another slight uptick in the number of people on the YouTube channel last week. If you
Hey.
do go there, of course, the computer points don't tell you much. So what you will see instead as we talk about each division is my basic notes that I read out there. You can see where I went off script and where I stuck to it if you care to.
And where the hidden typos are.
Oh, hopefully I covered all that on the online part, but we'll see.
I
I miss at
spotted
least
one
one.
in this draft that I did not bring up, and I'm gonna not mention it.
Well, well, I don't feel like spending the time going searching, although, what the heck, that could be fun. But we will return next week to preview the 7 state championship games. And of course, more importantly, to announce who wins those 18 full-size candy bars.
Ooh. What happens if the computer wins?
Well, then maybe it stays in my box and we put it off for the next week, huh?
We have to beat the computers? Dang. Okay.
So until we're back next week, this is Bruce and Rebekah saying, so long, everybody.